It's preseason, but as we said in our opening hour, that does not mean the reactions are only for the preseason, or maybe we use this time to make sure we are game ready and regular season ready come Monday, September 9th. That will be the first Monday following the first full Sunday slate around the National Football League. DRS, we're going to play a little NFL buy or sell from the weekend that was, and forecasting a new campaign in 2024 for the National Football League. I mentioned it briefly. One of the stories out of a 13-game slate on Saturday was not a good performance, a promising performance in Houston, but one that left us scratching our head and oftentimes laughing out loud. That was Daniel Jones in his preseason debut for the New York Giants. One of his first passes of the game was almost a safety. It was taken the other way for a pick six. He threw another interception not all that much later on. Yeah, 138 passing yards, but 2 INTs and no passing scores. Buy or sell, Donnie? Daniel Jones is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL.
It's not an easy answer because usually we're like, well, there should be 4 or 5 opportunities where he can be a better quarterback than a lot of guys out here. And I don't know if that is. So technically I'll sell it because I'm just looking at maybe 2 quarterback names on here. The Will Levis of the Titans, we're not really too sure what we're going to get out of him this year, but he does have some pretty good compliments around him. I guess the other one would be Jacoby Brissett, who's supposed to be your day one starter in New England. But we're also talking about guys that haven't even secured that starting job technically at this point. I mean, probably Will Levis going to get it by default, and Jacoby Brissett, we've been told, is that leader, but who knows how long he'll actually be it. But from a season-long perspective, where you enter week number 1 and are supposed to be the starter for 17 weeks, not holding that placemat for 3 to 4 weeks before the rookie takes over, it probably is Daniel Jones at that point. Now, you saw the 11 for 18, hey, look, he threw for over 100 yards. That's impressive, when technically it's not. Had 3 terrible decisions with the football. 2 wound up being an interception, and 1 actually got returned for a pick six, one of the worst throws you're going to see from a veteran quarterback. But his mobility was there. He's going to be able to do some things within that offense. But again, the ceiling on Daniel Jones, 15, 16 touchdown passes, it's absurdity that a starting quarterback would have that as sort of his ceiling here. So by default, on the starters you expect to be day 1 through week 17, week 18 next year, you probably have to buy that he is the worst quarterback. But if it's just about lining up the top 32 quarterbacks, I probably would sell. But again, not from a vantage point where I have 5 or 6 names that I can absolutely go to that I know are going to be worse than Daniel Jones. And he didn't exactly lift everybody's expectations, because as soon as those games kicked off, as soon as we got the highlights back in, it was like, oh yeah, look at this pass by Daniel Jones. And nobody's like, wow, that's kind of interesting. No, we all laughed and said, yeah, that's Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and that's the tough part, right? You never want to be one of the storylines from a preseason game when you are the presumptive starter because everybody is laughing at you. 26.75 and a hook. That is the passing yards prop for the 2024 season for Daniel Jones, a number he has gone over in 3 of his 5 NFL seasons during his career. But that should show you what the odds outlook is for Danny Dimes. Of course, he was paid following 2022, in which the Giants earned a playoff spot. They knocked off Minnesota on the road, Super Wild Card weekend, and Daniel Jones looked pretty darn good. Rookie year under Brian Daboll, a winning record. Things felt at least okay for the New York Giants. Very different feel this year. The Giants, the longest price of the 4 teams in the NFC East, a win total of only 6.5, and the under has the hefty juice. I'm going to sell the notion that Daniel Jones is the worst starting quarterback in the National Football League because, as Donnie mentioned, even with quarterback battles that might be a slight competition at this moment, you would have to go through the list and say that out of 32, Daniel Jones ranks 32. Do we give rookies an advantage over Danny Dimes, who we haven't seen? Is Bo Nix better than Daniel Jones? Is Caleb Williams better than Daniel Jones? I think people in Denver, Chicago, Washington with Jaden Daniels would take their rookie quarterback based on promise alone over Danny Dimes at this moment. But it's tough to say a rookie is better when they haven't recorded a regular season stat at this moment. Is Daniel Jones better than Gardner Minshew? Is Daniel Jones better than Anthony Richardson? Bryce Young? Again, I think those questions are out there. Is Daniel Jones better than Sam Darnold? Now the starter in Minnesota because of the injury to J.J. McCarthy. Maybe even if J.J. McCarthy was fully healthy, I'd give Danny Dimes the edge as of right now against Sam Darnold. Is he bottom 5? Okay. Is he bottom 10? For sure. I would say that, which makes this season, Donnie, not about is Daniel Jones a starting quarterback. Is Daniel Jones a good starting quarterback? Does he rank in the top 20, in the top half around the National Football League? It makes this season, for me, a question of what success looks like for the G-men and what it means moving forward. Will Joe Shane, will Brian Daboll be back for their 4th year in the National Football League following year 3 together?
And here's the crazy part about the question is that we're even asking this question. Just a year and a half ago, whatever it was, they're signing Daniel Jones as their franchise guy to a big money contract. And here we are, him getting on the football field after his first preseason appearance, basically saying to ourselves, is he the worst starting quarterback in the NFL? This is where the jokes write themselves at this point. Like, if we're actually asking this question, why do we have a general manager in place that signed him and we're a coach who actually backed him? Because it wasn't as if it was a new regime, got caught up in a bad contract. Let's play it out this year to see what we have. No, they chose this guy, and we're asking the question, is he worse than Will Levis? Is he worse than Jacoby Brissett? Is he worse than a rookie quarterback who's never played in the NFL? That is straight up insanity, but makes it so much fun to talk about because nothing that we've seen out of Daniel Jones, and to say like his best season was probably like his rookie year or second year, where at least he was able to throw a decent amount of touchdown passes, how far that regression has gone. And also, it's not as if it's like, hey, you know what? We really took care of Danny Dimes. We got 3 dynamite wide receivers, a great running back, a fantastic offensive line. This is his chance to shine. He's coming off a knee injury with 1 rookie wide receiver and absolutely nothing out there to work with. So, yes, he might be the worst quarterback with maybe the worst starting cast outside of New England. Good luck, Daniel Jones.
I wonder what Malik Neighbors would answer this burning buy or sell question around the NFL at this moment. Daniel Jones' best year by far was 2022, better than a 67% completion percentage. His best mark in his NFL career, the most passing yards he has ever thrown for, more than 3,200. But only 15 touchdowns. Tom Vecchio will join us in hour number 3 for his Monday Prop Perspective. I know he is not too fond of at least Daniel Jones having better production than 16 and a half, which is his regular season passing touchdown prop. And Donnie is really right. When you look at this offseason, when you look at this preseason, you don't want your takeaway to be after his first preseason game, is he the worst quarterback? Even if you could argue adamantly, no, he is not the worst starting quarterback of all 32 around the NFL. And give us the names that we have floated out there in the conversation. The fact it's even a discussion is a very, very bad sign. DRS, I remember a couple of years ago during 2022, your guy, Brian Rutkowski, used to work here at SportsGrid, a great man in B-Ruts, big fan of the Giants. A lot of his friends at a birthday dinner that Kevin and I were at were trying to debate Kevin and I that Daniel Jones was a top 16, top half starting quarterback in the National Football League. And it's a lot easier to name 16 better guys for Daniel Jones than maybe 2 or 3 worse guys. And that's the issue, I think, for this Giants organization.
Yes, and also, it's one of the few instances where you had a quarterback that was going to be set to be a free agent that not a single other team, the other 31 teams, would have even picked up the phone and made a phone call to his agent to have been their starting quarterback and paid them big money. The Giants bid against themselves with a bad football player and overpaid. And I remember the jokes that Kevin and I used to have on the early line when this deal actually went down. The bright spot of this contract wasn't what they paid Daniel Jones. It was that had an escape hatch after 2 years. When you're signing your franchise guy, and the best thing you could say about the contract is if he stinks, we can get rid of him. You knew it was bad. And yes, they will be getting rid of Daniel Jones at the end of the season.
Front-loaded in the first 2 years with all the guarantees, so there is that escape hatch entering 2025. More buy or sell next. More quarterbacking news and questions around the National Football League live right here on this Monday on the early line. In our favorite game, it's NFL buy or sell. Dak Prescott still looking for a new contract at the Star. Dak Prescott, who, if he does not sign a contract extension, you would assume in the next few weeks will enter 2024 playing under contract for his final year in Dallas. Here's what he has done so far for the Cowboys. Took over as the starting QB for Tony Romo during his rookie campaign way back in 2016 and has been the guy in Dallas ever since. But again, entering the final year of a contract extension he signed ahead of 2020's campaign. You see the numbers. Go to the regular season. Flashy in terms of the stats. If there are questions about Dak Prescott, it's the playoff resume. Just 2-5. But the issues that plague Dallas from a postseason perspective are much longer and deeper than that of Dak Prescott. They go back to 1995, well before Dak's tenure. He has not been the guy to turn it around at the start. I just throw that in there anytime Dak Prescott's playoff resume is brought up. But the question, Donnie, the question here in buy or sell, Dak Prescott will be the Cowboys QB for the next 5 years.
It's a great question, because if the buy or sell was a little bit different, as if Dak Prescott's going to sign a lucrative long-term extension with the Cowboys, I'd absolutely be buying. But 5 years is a long time. Now, he's right in the middle of his prime at 31 years old.
Right.
There's no question that if he re-signs with Dallas, he'll have a great 5 years. But that's still a long, long runway here for him to complete. If I had to answer the question now, and of course I would buy that, because I do think he's going to get a long-term lucrative deal from the Dallas Cowboys. The one thing we know about Dak Prescott, he's very efficient and very good in the regular season.
Yep.
And that team does have weapons like CeeDee Lamb. If he does get into camp, which he is now, if he is happy with his contract just even for this year, he will have a solid season, which means in the offseason, are the Dallas Cowboys really just going to let Dak Prescott walk and get nothing for him and go draft a rookie quarterback and try again and are all in win now mode here for Jerry Jones to get a Super Bowl? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they re-sign him to a long-term contract. But again, panning out if he's going to be a Dallas Cowboy when he's 36 years old as opposed to 33, 34, maybe 35, it's a little bit easier. But there's no world for myself where I think Dak Prescott is going to walk next year from the Dallas Cowboys without a new contract. That's not happening here. Right. So the simple answer for me is I'm going to buy this, because I do think Dak Prescott's going to get a long-term lucrative contract. The condition, though, is will he play 5 full years for the Cowboys? He'll be there at least for the next couple years. 5 might be a slight stretch, but if I had to say it now, I'm buying it.
I would have said, Donnie, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, buy for sure. I am fully in on Dak Prescott being the future of the Cowboys, at least for the next half decade. I understand what you mean in terms of the age. He turned 31 at the end of July. But I'm really starting to question what the plan is in Dallas. And I'm not entirely sure who has the leverage. I can tell you Jerry Jones thinks he does. There are reports that CeeDee Lamb was offered $33 million per year, would make him the second highest paid receiver in the National Football League, but a full $2 million annually behind Justin Jefferson. And CeeDee Lamb was not all that pleased with that deal. Dak Prescott has not played for Dallas in either of the first 2 preseason games for the Cowboys. That's not necessarily a surprise. But Trey Lance is also not under contract for Dallas entering next season. And that's where I think Jerry Jones is playing a very, very dangerous game. Because as we have said multiple times on this show, your quarterback in Dak, your top wide receiver, and by far now your best offensive piece in CeeDee Lamb, and your head coach Mike McCarthy are very, very close to entering a season in which they will play or coach in the final year of their contract, which would allow them to test the open market. I'm not sure who is bidding for Mike McCarthy, but I know people would bid for CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. Jerry has all the money in the world. As we know, the Cowboys last week were valued at $10.32 billion, the richest sports franchise in the history of the world, the first to ever break through $10 billion. And yet he's playing this dangerous game where in a week from now, in 10 days from now, we are approaching game week around the National Football League without his quarterback and his wide receiver paid and under contract beyond this season. It's very murky waters, I think, at the start.
Yeah, it's almost like playing Russian roulette, and we never could have had to come to this. Let's just say in the offseason, and I always bring this up, if you say Dak is your future quarterback and you like him where he's at, you know he's going to make a lot of money, but those first couple years when you renegotiate that contract and give the extension, it lowers that cap value, which means you can go out and sign extra players. They didn't do that. So something leads me to believe that Dak Prescott, I do think, is going to be a Cowboy, and I would not be surprised, Ben, if he has that new long-term lucrative deal before game number 1 this season. But that defeats the whole purpose of what the Dallas Cowboys were trying to do. Like, they're always known that if they want to re-sign him, it's going to cost a lot of money. But if you did it in March before the free agency process begins, you can add 2 or 3 more players. Redoing him now, giving a lot of money, sure. You know what? He's not going anywhere for 5 years, going to play for the Dallas Cowboys, but you could have been so much more beneficial just a few months earlier. Same thing with CeeDee Lamb, getting those guys re-upped and getting those good vibes entering into the season. But you're right about this. There's a lot of guys on contracts that are unhappy with it, which includes your lame duck head coach. Usually it doesn't rise to the occasion. Like, man, played that perfectly. Dak had to prove his money to us. We made it to the NFC Championship game. McCarthy was sensational. He was the coach of the year. We're not getting those vibes. You know what usually happens? Dak Prescott's unhappy, upset. The team doesn't work out that well, and Mike McCarthy's fired by week number 9 in this season. That's what the Dallas Cowboys are hoping to avoid. I understand the pressurized environment that you like these guys to play and say, hey, put up or shut up. You haven't won for me yet. I'm going to wait until you win before I pay you. There's some substance to that, but Dak Prescott knows if he's average this year, he's going to be the highest paid quarterback in the history of the NFL if he's average this year. So why did we wait so long, Ben? Why not trade him before the season starts, and eventually you're going to pay him, and you already missed the window on adding more players?
Well said. What is Jerry Jones hoping for? Hey, add on to these Lombardi trophies or you're gone? Nobody has done that. No quarterback, no coach, no wide receiver, no even owner has done that since 1995 for Dallas. I wonder if you selected by the question that Dak Prescott will be the Cowboys QB for the next 5 years, what the deal looks like. We saw Tua get a 4-year deal. We saw Jordan Love get a 4-year deal with $55 million. Would it be a 5-year extension, a 4-year extension? For how much money, that remains to be seen. Defense next on the early line. NFL buy or sell continues here following preseason week number 2. Entering the final week of the preseason. Next Monday, we'll be talking the end of training camp and game week on the horizon around the National Football League. Defense wins championships, or at least hardware, from the Defensive Player of the Year category. An interesting question from our producer, Joe Frizo, but I do enjoy it. Here are the active NFL DPOY members still around the NFL, the National Football League at this moment. Khalil Mack, of course. Stephon Gilmore just signed this weekend by Minnesota. Probably not at his Defensive Player of the Year standard, but still hoping to be a contributor for a Viking secondary that has had some issues with injuries this offseason. TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, and Myles Garrett, the last 3 winners of the award. So buy or sell, Donnie Rightside. The Defensive Player of the Year will be a first-time winner, and we asked that question with Micah Parsons, who has not won the award just yet, as the favorite.
I'm going to sell this, but obviously if you're looking at the odds market, you probably should be buying. Why? Michael Parsons hasn't won this yet, and he's the favorite here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, so that does make some sense. But if you're going over some of the leaders in the clubhouse, if you will, Parsons is fantastic. Garrett's great. Watt, Crosby, what do all those guys have in common? They are pass rushers here. That's what leads, right? 15-plus sacks. You're going to be in that market. You can see if all of those guys are healthy for the 18-week season, they're going to be in that range. And if anybody goes out and sets the all-time NFL record or approaches it, let's just say gets to 20, they're going to be a shoo-in. So who can actually do that? I love Michael Parsons. That guy wrecks game plans on a week-to-week basis. If you want to downgrade the Dallas Cowboys in that position and say, well, we know he's probably going to be the highest-paid defensive player when it's all said and done next season, that means he is going to be in tune, Ben, for an unbelievable season, knows that how many sacks he gets is going to be a direct impact on his bottom line. That helps. But also, do you downgrade it a little bit by saying, the Philadelphia Eagles have a solid offensive line, and they have a mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts. The Washington Commanders, they have a rookie quarterback, but he's really mobile, which means it's hard to sack. And Daniel Jones, coming off that knee injury, watching him in that performance, maybe doesn't throw the football that great. He still has some legs to get away. I'm not using it saying, well, that's why you can't bet him. We're just looking for some intricacies on why you would see the pressing point, which means Micah Parsons going for a contract, which means he's going to be headhunting the entire football game as opposed to the competition that might be able to get away where if it was a non-mobile quarterback, you might get a couple easy sacks. You take a look at Myles Garrett. He's an absolute man-child, right in the middle of the mix. You know he's going to be up there. Same thing with TJ Watt. So I look, and again, I'm not downgrading Crosby, by the way, but he is a great player. But also, when do you sort of pick up those sacks where you don't have to worry about the run, Ben? Winning games in the fourth quarter up 7 to 14 points, you don't have to worry about anything. How many times are the Vegas Raiders going to be up 14 to 17 points. We might be able to get an extra 3 or 4 sacks throughout the season, just headhunting quarterbacks at the end of a football game. So for my money, I do think Parsons might be the most talented overall technically, but I'm telling you right now, like a healthy Garrett and a healthy TJ Watt, they are pushing 20 sacks this year. So as much as I want to say I'm going to give it to Michael Parsons, maybe I got to sell this and say it looks like we might have a repeat winner of this award, because I just look for unbelievable seasons out of, once again, Garrett and TJ Watt.
And again, I don't think that's a flawed type of thinking. 3 of the 5 best prices are winners of this award previously. TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, who won it a year ago, and Nick Bosa alongside Max Crosby at that 10-1 number. I believe Michael Parsons is a justified favorite. I do not think he's going to run away with the award like, wow, yeah, for sure it's going to be a first-time winner, because Micah is the guy that is the favored number. Michael Parsons is going to be in contention for the NFL Defensive Player of the Year award. A name that you do not see in the top 10 is Aaron Donald, 3-time winner of the award, of course, retired at the end of this previous season for the LA Rams. So it is intriguing, right? 3 of the 5 best prices have won the award previously, but the rest of the top 10, those 7 next best prices, are not or have not won the award in years past. And Stephon Gilmore, who is now signed by Minnesota, again, adding depth to that secondary, is an anomaly. He won the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2019. He is the only guy in the last decade that did not play defensive line or edge rusher. TJ Watt, technically an outside linebacker, but we all know what he does better than most. So when you look at guys that do not play up front, the shortest price, Kyle Hamilton, the very talented young safety out of Notre Dame for Baltimore at 30-1.
Yeah, what does he have to do outside there, right? 4 or 5 touchdowns, pick sixes at this point, maybe lead the league in interceptions, get close to that interception mark as a record. It's just hard, because the same way we pick MVPs a lot of times in Major League Baseball, Ben, oh, look, that guy hit 64 home runs. That trumps everything here. Same thing with sacks. Sacks trump everything. Yeah. Whoever leads the league in sacks, that's going to be the Defensive Player of the Year.
Hour 3 up next on the Early Line.